welcome back to another episode of Megabuild Survival with me, the Maximus JK, and as you saw in the intro, I have painted the floor green. I decided to use some bone meal here and moss up the entire floor of the base, and I think it turned out alright. It adds a nice layer of naturalness and color to the base, which I think fits pretty well. I think it'll also look a lot better once this snow eventually goes away when we put a roof on this place. But if we don't like it or we have different ideas, we can always rip it up and change it. It's not necessarily something that has to stay, but I think it's good for a baseline layer, especially if we want to add paths or roads or whatever we want to do down here. In our last episode, we worked on a massive storage array that sorts and organizes all our items, and now we have everything sorted and organized, which will be super easy for building. That's my plan for this episode, is to do a lot of building, especially on the upper layers of the cathedral. At the top of the mountain, we made some windows in the last episode, which I think turned out really, really well, and I started planning out some other additional lines and areas that I want to build out in this episode. I have this line of andesite, which goes at a 2-block diagonal slope into these bone block pillars, which are going to be for our buttresses. If you don't remember, buttresses are what hold up roofs in Gothic architecture and are one of the key components to build something in the Gothic style. So most Gothic cathedrals have massive windows and massive decorations, and then this kind of flat place where you can see these floating buttresses supporting the roof, which would be right here, and it would somehow connect right up here. From there, we're gonna have a flat wall and put some other decoration. I built up this roof with a slope of stairs and slabs, and I tried a few different iterations of design, starting out with this X pattern using a very light gray color palette. It really did not fit the vision that I was going for. I think the color palette was a little too bright, so for this next panel, I decided to use the Gothic arch again and use an even darker color palette, with blackstone being the darkest color, making that arch on the roof, and I think it turned out much better on the second attempt. I then completed the arches for the rest of the building. A few hours have passed, and I have been working on the buttresses that are a part of the Gothic cathedral. I worked on this one right here, and then the buttress that will connect eventually to the wall. I can say that I'm not happy with these. I do enjoy this buttress here. I think it looks simple and doesn't take away too much from the build, but this is like disaster zone. It's like too fat and too deep. I've been looking at reference images, and this is too detailed and too fat and just not the right proportions and not even the right colors, so this all has to change, but I think it's given me quite a headache. I want to work on one of the main projects of this episode, which is going to be a massive mud farm. A mud farm will be able to give us mud bricks, which is something that I think we'll build our roof out of. I have sketched out some ideas of what the roof will potentially look like, and I think it'll look really, really nice with that mud color. I'm gonna start looking up designs and figuring out the best way to produce a lot of mud bricks. I don't have any wheat, so unfortunately we're gonna have to figure out some ways to get wheat as well. I've decided what I want to do. After looking up designs online, I found two different categories of mud farm. One category was where basically you would put your dirt down and automatically it would be converted into mud, and then you would be manually pick it up by the player. The other option is a stone block, which is then converted into a moss block, which then is bone mealed to have an azalea sapling on it, which turns this moss block into rooted dirt, and then that is then turned to mud and automatically sent to a blast chamber. The design for this is significantly more complicated than just taking the dirt and turning it into mud. I planned out putting it right up here by the 11. We input a bunch of dirt and it will create a giant mud cube that we can just kind of manually mine out by hand. It is a little more manual than this kind of design, creating mud out of thin air, and as cool as this design would be, I think it feels like a lot of work that may not be worth it. In my creative test world, I already have a few designs for this mud cube, so I'm gonna get back to my creative test world and then build it up in survival. Then I'll bring you guys back in for some updates. I worked on a massive mud cube, and I think it turned out super duper cool. This 11 by 11 by 13 mud cube is solid mud, which gives about a shulker box worth of mud every time we fill up this cube. I developed this system using observers, where the observers for the floor push all the pistons up, and it eventually makes a cube once this has all been filled up. Use this circuit, which basically is a counter circuit, so once the observer flashes 10 times, it sends a monostable circuit input into this system here, which just sends one tick to this observer. So it either puts the block here or removes the block. The mud goes through this chamber and then goes to this custom mud converting block placement thing that I made, where every time it observes a new mud block being placed, it powers this dispenser here, which has water bottles, and converts everything to mud. So you can see it automatically does it, and then the water is refilled and flows right back into this hopper, recycling the whole system. So it's a totally closed system, and I just have this piston feed tape sending all the dirt down into the cube. All this other redstone down here is part of the reset line, which leads up into this new area, which I call the micro farm district. So I have 3 micro farms that I worked on. The first one here is a good way to convert coarse dirt into dirt, where if you take coarse dirt, flatten it with your shovel, and then break it, you're able to turn coarse dirt into dirt. But a very unknown mechanic is that you can actually craft coarse dirt with gravel. And remember, we have a gravel duper that we made earlier in the season, so we basically have infinite dirt with this machine. I can put in a stack of gravel and a stack of dirt and end up with 2 stacks of dirt in the end. It's a 1-to-1 with gravel, so I'm really happy that this farm works. Unfortunately, I broke a shovel while I was converting some of the dirt, but overall, this is a nice little farm to have. This is our dirt placement area. So if we go up, we can press dirt in, and eventually it gets formed into this cube. Eventually, I'll build some doors here so I can just AFK and just place this dirt continuously. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to fill up this mud cube, and you get about a shulker box of mud in the process. So I have to say that it is definitely worth it, and I'm happy that this farm now exists. The other farm here is a micro farm, which uses seeds, and if we turn it on, it is a little noisy here. But this is a great way to get a bunch of wheat, and I have a hopper minecart underneath that channels all the drops into this chest. I use this mini farm so we can use the mud and the wheat to create packed mud. I've already ran it during testing and AFK'd a few times, and I already have a bunch of packed mud here. About 3 shulker boxes worth of packed mud, which we're gonna use for our roof. I'm really excited to implement the roof here. I think it'll really make the space feel a little cozy and a little more at home, and especially since we have all this snow that keeps spawning. I'm super excited about this roof design. I think it turned out really nice. So I'm gonna do a little test of the design that I have planned and bring you guys back in. And just like that, a roof comes into existence. I outlined a lot of the potential roof here in diorite, and I think it turned out really cool. If we hop into free cam mode, you better see kind of the angles and shapes that I was going with for this roof. We have 2 intersecting triangles, both at the same slope. I decided to go with a gabled roof. You can see over each window has 2 diagonal slope lines. Each window has 1 gabled roof right here, and then a center gable, which will be the main slope and the main roof. It is covered in snow right now, as it snowed in the process of making this build, but eventually I'm gonna make it totally snowproof and ready to be an actual roof. These buttresses here, I think, were a little too tall when I originally designed them, so I'm gonna have to refine them and edit them just a little bit so they can fit into this roof style. Generally, Gothic buildings have pretty simple roof styles and are really impressive with the wall and window designs, but I decided to make a little bit more impressive of a roof just because I wanted to add that detail, and I didn't want this necessarily to be 100% accurate to a Gothic cathedral. I've sketched out some of the wireframes of these designs of this roof, and now I think I'm ready to start adding color and details to this roof. I'm gonna bring you guys back in once I added a little more detail and design to the rest of this roof. And now that's a cool looking roof. I used the mud and some smooth basalt in order to create this pattern, and added some fences, walls, and iron bars to create this kind of complicated pattern for the rest of this roof. I really like how this roof turned out. I used a trick up here where fence gates, when connected to walls, actually go lower. So this fence gate is actually at the normal position, but when you place a wall next to it, it gets lower, and you can do some really cool detail pieces like this. It took a little bit of time, but I'm really happy with this result. The details and the imposingness of how big this build is really starting to dawn on me. I think the mud brick tiles are perfect for a roof tile design, and they sound super cool. Another important thing about this roof is it's entirely spawn-proof. Every surface is either a stair or a slab, and therefore no mobs will spawn at all on this entire roof. But there's a little bit of a problem. The other half of this roof has not been touched at all. You're starting to hear the music, so I think it's time to hit time-lapse mode and complete the other side of this roof. One thing I didn't realize when making this is how dark a roof would be. These whole walls are covered in dark, spawnable spots, so hopefully I won't get dive bombed by a creeper. There's a creeper right there. Eventually I'm going to fill up this wall with decorations or farms or whatever I think would fit. In our last episode, I sorted all of our items from our main storage room into this new storage room, but there was a problem. I have all this concrete that I got from the duper, and I never found a good place for me to store all this concrete. We have shulker boxes of not only concrete, but concrete powder as well. So I need to make another bulk storage unit, similar to the one that we have in the corner over there, and the one up here. This one is shulker boxes, and this one is just regular item storage. I think we should have shulker box storage just for this stuff. In order to build out this bulk storage unit, I needed to find a space, and I think the best space is probably right here on this wall. It's right above the micro farms that we built earlier in this episode. It's kind of hard to see with the pillars, and I think if we mine this area out, I think it'll look good, and we can easily fit the storage unit for all 32 colors of concrete that we need to store. We'll then have to hook it up to the main water stream that goes into the sorting system, but I don't think that should be too hard. It just has to go before the multi-item sorter, as it totally slows down the input speed at which it can sort items. I set up a little TNT here that should hopefully blow up a full chunk of this thing. So if I am able to hit the target block, okay, and then it will... That should be enough room. I already laid out what my design will be for this concrete bulk storage area. I have 5 sections of double speed item filter shulker box loaders with 6 in each section. So this is gonna be for concrete, then concrete powder, concrete powder, and then we're gonna go all the way down. This didn't quite add up, so this section right in the middle is actually 7. So we're going to split one concrete powder in between the 2 of these. I mined out enough room for the bulk shulker loader on this side, but I still need to mine out a little bit more to fit this. It took a while to figure out the actual layout and design. I didn't realize how many 32 shulker box loaders would be. It's way bigger than the one over there. So hopefully we don't start seeing lag once I start implementing this. And I noticed something that was really annoying. These pillars were off by 1 block. I had to tear down both these pillars and move it over 1, and now it totally fits. I think it's time to build those shulker box loaders. What is that noise? Oh, I know. It's the stupid alarm. I don't know what I was thinking, but this is clearly not 32 individual bulk shulker loaders. I accidentally counted 32 per side. So this is 32 and this has 32. Actually, it has 31 on each side, so I'm a double idiot. I deserve this. So I actually just rearranged the chests here. Each of these is going to be split out into its concrete and concrete powder form into shulker box loaders, and it's going to be centered around here. Let me tear all this down and actually set up these item filters. As some of these chests come into frame, you can see that I finished the concrete sorter and concrete powder sorter system. We have the shulker loaders all done, and then the item filters right at the top. I added a shulker box loader system here, where basically once the cart is full up with shulker boxes, it will then run back and forth and fill up all these modules with shulker boxes. So this is all topped off. I also have all the filters set in. So I have the concrete, then the concrete powder, and it just keeps going all the way down the line. So let's sort all these items. Now that all those items are sorted, I want to show you how I connected the concrete sorter up to the rest of the system. The item input system is unchanged, and the items directly go into the airlock system that I set up in the previous episode. We go through the major bulk loaders here, first because most of our items will fall into these categories, and I made some adjustments. So instead we have this water stream that goes all the way up and goes all the way over to the far end of the concrete system, and then it goes over all of the item filters, loops back, and then continues on its way into the rest of the item storage. That took 2 full days of sorting to get done, but we are finally sorted here. All the items of the world are now officially in the storage system. And look at this. shulkers of concrete powder, and all is good. Now that we have the concrete sorting system all set up, I want to do one more project to finish out this episode. Back on the outside of the cathedral here, and I want to take down this buttress that we have right behind us, as well as add some additional details on the outside to really make it special. I added some iron trap doors here which prevent snow from spawning on these divider sections. I also want to figure out a main design here for the central area. Not sure if it's going to be an arch or some other pattern. That's looking a little closer. Ooh. Now that that's in, let's add some textured depth. We're starting to see some depth here. I got rid of the stripe down here because I think it was just a little too much, but now I want to do it on both the other sides. Now the panels have been built up on this side, so I think it's time to do it on the other side. And just like that, the entire other side is now complete. I think that's going to be it for me for this episode. I'm super excited to work more on the exterior of this build in the next episode and maybe work on some bamboo storage for an upcoming furnace smelter, which will go right here. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you have a wonderful day, and bye-bye.